Welcome to the Ali Maz Show, where we focus on human being and spiritual living with a deep inclination for the divine. Together, we delve into the seen and the unseen and explore what it means to be well and whole from the inside out. Over the last 17 years, I've been focused on how movement, breath, and the power of the mind can liberate us from our template of conditioning and carve a path to live a truly authentic life. My hope is that my guests will inspire and expand you to continue to choose the life that is yours. Today's guest is a very special one, someone who I haven't spoken to in a very long time. 10 years ago, we embarked on creating a movement through movement, a place where all people of all ages could come together and be themselves. This place was called District Movement, and today I have my co-creator and long-lost friend, Jian Pablico on. Welcome, Jian.
Hello, what an intro. I like that. Long lost. I'm found. I'm found.
You're found. We haven't really spoken that much over the last 5 years since the district closed, and I thought, why not just record it?
For everyone, this is our first conversation.
Since we closed the doors, we haven't spoken. No, we've touched base a little bit.
We have.
But this is a real true catch up. And can you believe that it's been 10 years? 10 years ago, probably, what is it, November, we would be like sitting in a warehouse that would become the studio trying to build this wall that Donna from the District of North Vancouver wasn't allowing us to build. And we were back and forth with the contractor. I think that's where we were at 10 years ago, November.
Yes. Probably struggling too at this time because, it's hard for the fitness scene, like at these times when it's holidays, people are off, and you gotta create creative solves as a studio to try to just make it. It's not just everyone's gonna show up day one.
No. I mean, I feel like we were building that second bathroom and maybe we threw a little bit of an open house like the December 2013, but we didn't open our doors, I think, until January of 2014, which feels like 1,000 years ago. So for people who don't know what the district was and is, how would you explain it in your own words?
In my own words, well, the district, I guess it is and it was. It's a space for community where we happen to do movement as a way to come together and connect. Of course, there's yoga, there's burpees, there's loud music, there's parties, but I just really saw it as we saw it as a place to gather and see each other. And I would say, looking back on it now, in a moment of time, in a season of our life, I just, I was out for a walk earlier and I saw somebody that used to go to the district I hadn't seen in a while, Simone, and she was like running past me. I was like, she just got married. Like it's just so interesting to see and cool in a way of not sadness of people that remember the district, but there was like a sudden connection of like, hey, like let's meet up, let's connect, and it's real. So I think that still outlasts itself beyond the 5 years where, there's 5 years plus more over people truly saw you or you had the opportunity or the bravery to show yourself. So, it continues on.
Yeah, waves don't die.
Waves don't die. Yes. Whoa.
So we're gonna drop into some nostalgia a little bit later on about all things district. But for people that don't know you, including myself now, who are who are you? What do you
Oh, yeah.
do? What are you
Okay.
about?
What am I about? Okay. Yeah. I mean, my name is Jian. Right now I work for Lululemon, a Vancouver company that's all over the world now globally. And work in in the team development space. So really supporting teams in their leadership, facilitation. And then on the other end too, in the space of inclusion, diversity, and equity, making sure that's a huge part of the brand, like marketing, but also part of the products that we create, and the people are having the best experience possible that relates to all that work. So that's for the whole world. It gets me to a lot of places, to meet a lot of amazing people, which is like interesting because I still do some district things that we used to do in a retreat. So I would say 10 years later, I could proudly say and smile secretly because I'm like, I'm still doing what I did at this, 900 square foot studio. It just happens to be on a global stage. And that I believe, humbly saying it, that when people do when they experience the way that I facilitate or show up, it's different, and people say like, "Ooh, that was so natural. Like, I like how you did that," and people remember it, and that's how we were. I believe showing up in the community in our own way, and you couldn't really describe it, and I'm trying to find ways to describe it, but I would say long answer is still doing the same thing. It just amplified by a company that I believe in currently.
Yeah, I believe that. There's no doubt in my mind that you are not exactly the same person I met all those years ago doing the exact same thing. Something that we always did at the district was a check-in question, and this was a way for us to get to know our community and also for people to share their voice and be heard and be seen in a space. And this is one of your questions that I will
Uh,
ask you now. What two movies represent your life currently?
Currently, woo. Okay, currently. I mean, it is December soon, so I think one movie that never switches is Family Stone, like the most random movie, that perhaps is off-brand to me. But then again, if you knew me, it wasn't off-brand. Yeah, Family Stone, Christmas movie about family, and something that I I wish I had nostalgia about growing up, but I
Mhm.
had no nostalgia. So I think the movie gives me an opportunity to not only feel what perhaps other people felt, and what the holidays are supposed to feel, but then also try to provide that same, nostalgia for my kids and my family in the future. So that's one movie, and then the second movie is uh, City of God. I don't know if you've seen City of God. It's like an old school movie, but I'm like rewatching it. I rewatch a lot of things lately, because I feel like when I watched it, it was amazing, and now I'm an older person with more experiences, and then you just get more things about the movies. So City of God, finding your passion in the madness of the world and being relentless with it is something that really sticks out, resonates. City of God, Family Stone. What about
Per-
you?
Perfect. Um, so I think right now I'm a mix of the movie Wild, where he
Yeah,
like goes out and he's like society. I'm a little bit that,
eat the
and
berries and die.
yeah, eating the berries and dying. Well, not no. I mean, I do live in LA, and there's a lot of plant medicine here. So if you could call eating
Okay,
berries
nice.
and doing an ego death, then sure. And then maybe like um Royal Tenenbaums or like something like that. I don't know. There's something around like family and holiday, and I just that image of Gwyneth Paltrow with like eyeliner, like in a fur coat, smoking a cigarette.
Nice.
Something I don't know. I
That's
don't
your
smoke. Yeah, that's my answer.
answer.
So I have so many questions for you,
Mhm.
and I think I want to start with how has the district made you who you are today?
Damn, these are like very big
Yeah, I'm
questions.
about to dive in. This is the lightest question. We're only going deeper.
Okay, how has the district made me today? Um, well, I know that it's such a bucket list thing to say we created that, and we were the founders, and it happened. It was success. And I'm meeting a lot of people where like owning their own business is such a big goal and dream, and that's amazing, right? And I definitely want to support people in that. And at the same time, I feel like, um, district gave me that buck check off the bucket list, so then I can do something else. But
Hmm.
then I also found like I have to be able to be an entrepreneur even in whatever that I'm doing, right? So I don't have that thirst anymore to like do it on my own or not have a boss. Because at the end of the day, like even owning a business that's yours, like you still had other bosses, yourself for sure, but you're also your community. Not in a bad way necessarily, but there's still bills to pay. There's still Donna trying to, not give us our license to build a building. So I think what I learned now is that I still have to have the entrepreneurial spirit wherever I go, you
Yeah.
know, in other parts of my life, whether it's like current work or um, even when having a full-time plus job, I'm still scheming, you know, like,
Yeah.
oh, can I open a barber shop? And my wife, Carrie's just like, you should chill and not do that because it has nothing to do with your work, or you should probably, hang out more at home, which I do. But then even when I'm, coaching, helping coach basketball, which is a part of like, family, I'm like, well, how can I help the team? And, be a part of the team instead of just being a passive uh, parent and watch on the side. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think entrepreneurship would be the word. Like I learned about what that looks like, what it
Mm.
feels like, and how I
Mhm.
can put it on, even if the brick and mortar wasn't there anymore. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
totally. And something I know about you is that your mind never stops. Like when we first met and you started doing yoga more and you were like, I love Shavasana because I like get to think all the time. I'm like, well, that's not really the point of this moment,
Yes.
but your mind is constantly going on like what's next, or like I thought of this thing and how could that thing be a t-shirt, but the t-shirt is like an invitation to a secret party and the secret party is like an invitation to the thing. And yeah, it's just like
Yeah,
I've never met anyone whose mind works like
the least present person.
that.
Love it.
um if you could relive like one memory from the district, like if you
Mhm.
could go back and like live one moment, do you have what that moment would be?
So many moments. Wow. I mean, of course, there's tons of parties. There's tons of like sold out classes. I, to me, it's not one moment, but specific time of the week. It's like that Friday, like before like our last class that we taught together, like at 6 o'clock. Like the anticipation
Yeah.
of that class happening, and the class is going to be great. The music's going to be awesome. People are going to work out. People are going to do yoga. But to me, it's the anticipation of like who's coming and what are they bringing to celebrate with us the end of the week. I just love that feeling, and getting flowers and getting beer. It was such a ceremony, like
Yeah.
dinner table moment,
Yeah.
um, which I miss and would
Yeah.
like relive every time. Yeah,
Totally. Yeah, I agree. I feel like now having, living in LA, I've been here almost 3 years and it's sort of this hub of like the quote unquote wellness scene and everyone's always trying to do like the next best thing. And I don't know. I'm always rolling my eyes because it's like, and it's sort of the intersection of influencer and wellness and all of the things that exist here in LA. And I'm just like, damn, people would kill to get like, we used to get like almost 60 people on a Friday at 6 p.m. to work out and do yoga, like in the pouring rain, like outside. And
yeah.
I'm like, you guys have no idea.
Context too, it's like now that I drive by that place, I'm like, this is the most random place. Like, who would ever go here? Like, I go there to get dog food now. Like, it's across the way. Like, I just don't think people, like, we don't talk about like how random the location is. Like, what would that look like in LA? Like, would anyone ever go to that certain spot? Like, I don't think so.
No, people in LA want like cold eucalyptus towels and like infrared sauna and all the bells and whistles. And for context, for people who don't know, the district was a literal warehouse. It was, yeah, maybe it was 900 square feet total. We had a garage door that opened up to this random parking lot. We did not have much signage. We had no idea what we were doing. I was 26 years old.
That's good for branding. Don't.
We had no parking. We had 2 parking spots. Like it really, people ask me all the time, which I'm sure they do to you too. Like, oh, I want to open a studio. I want to do this. And I'm always like, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you because we were so naive. We had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. We didn't know a thing about how to run a business. And yet, in my mind, it was just the greatest success for so many reasons other than the bottom line, because sometimes we weren't always hitting that, especially in the beginning. But it
Yeah.
was more about the community that we built. And we had this class called Crush Hush. Jian would teach the first part of it, really hard workout. And then I would come in and teach yoga. And then people would stick around and have a beer and talk and connect. And even just this idea of Crush Hush, I know it was the name of a class, but it was really a lifestyle. And can you sort of explain like what Crush Hush means to you, or maybe like what Crush Hush as a philosophy looks like in your own life now?
Yeah, I think you explained it really well. I think today it's being able to like live in both worlds, like the duality of it. It's not to me, perhaps like at that time it was like one or the other. This is my specialty, this is your specialty, but we know we dabbled in both, right? And I think we were teaching people. I mean, maybe I say teaching, but maybe we weren't. They just wanted to work out. But to me, it's just being comfortable in the duality of like there is the fast pace of life, but you need the rest as well. And um, both can exist in a human being. Like it doesn't have to be one or the other. You actually perhaps need both. So I think you know, now that I have crush hush moments throughout the day, that's really what I've learned is like madness of the day, all the calls, all the Zoom things, all the, good tension arguments at work or even on my way home, the traffic, the madness of it all. And then like how do I transition and like hush before I walk through the door because it's important because the
Hmm.
people that I will see are like the most important people in my life. And if I take that crush energy, it's not going to work out. And then at the same time, when I also need to leave hush and be like, let's go, let's do everything, let's go for right now. Like I have a dog random, I have a dog, I take the dog for a walk, but I'm like, I'm going to walk with a 30-pound like vest, like that's so me, but I also need like rest and hush as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I First of all, I love that you have a dog because I feel like, did you like dogs? Like,
I
I
didn't
mean,
even existed. I don't think I saw.
um, and I think our dogs are like cousins, right? Is
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so you talk a lot about this duality, and I think of crush hush, and then I also think of levity and depth, right? And this is something that we were always playing with at the studio, and I know it is the cornerstone of the work you do, and is certainly the cornerstone of the work I continue to do.
Yeah.
How can we go really deep with people and create these brave containers for people to really open up and be vulnerable, and at the same time have so much fun? And I think it's what's missing often in experiences that I go into. I'm like, oh, everyone's taking themselves so
Yeah.
seriously, and that's actually a detriment, because if you can actually play, this work gets so much deeper.
Totally,
Yeah.
totally. And it's so healing to laugh, right? I mean, obviously, perhaps I didn't say it in that way back in the day, but just to laugh. That's why I love not only being able to support the teenagers around, but they just had that that like youthness, that non-attachment to things. That like when they told us a joke or we were laughing at something, it felt so real and it was so rejuvenating to laugh. Um, as a form of stress relief or a form of self care.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
deep. Yeah.
Yeah, it is deep. And so some of the work we used to do, so the reason why we opened the studio in the first place is because we wanted to serve the youth. We wanted to serve our community of young people. And it's actually how we met. You were in your youth work. I was doing my youth work, and we came together. Do you want to talk a little bit about the youth work you were doing when we first met, and then how it kind of evolved into having a brick and mortar?
Yeah, yeah. The youth work that I was doing is really supporting young men in really navigating relationship at the core of it. But then those relationships are either with, you know, yeah, in a romantic relationship or in a friendly relationship, mostly with, other men, right? So really teaching men how to use assertiveness, which if you break it down is confidence and breath and all the tools that like perhaps you learn in yoga, but assertiveness and being confidence in yourself to navigate those relationships. So if we teach boys specifically, the idea, we always kind of play around this idea in safety called like the guy code, right? But if you teach guys that the guy code is what you make it, and if it exists, like if it exists, you're able to undefine it if you want to. So that's really what I was working with them, because that became the barrier to even friendships with other guys, but definitely became a barrier to like, healthy relationship with partners in the future, right? Because we we always have this activity that, I mean, I still do with grown people, was like the AB with the fist, right? Where I essentially, if you're listening to this, I have one person hold out their fist, and then the other person, I would say, okay, in a room full of people, now whoever can open the other person's fist the fastest, please put up your hand. And because I don't explain it too much and I make it a competition, what often happens for 20 seconds is people try to like destroy the other person's hand, right? And when actuality, the fastest way to open that person's fist is just to ask and say, can you open your fist? Which a lot of young men don't have the skill set of just asking, right? Or asking another guy like, hey, do you want to hang out? Or asking somebody that they love, like, is this okay with you,
Yeah.
right? And so it's a simple example of like the work that I was doing that's then became embedded in using fitness as an avenue
Yeah.
to start to do that work. Because to me, it's so awkward for an adult, in quotation, to say, I want to have a talk with you now about consent. It's
Yeah.
like you could have that, but it's almost like it had no foundation and no trust built in to be able to have that conversation in the future. So I think I know it connected to the work that you were doing, whether it was with young girls or the community in general.
Yeah, I think that the similarity was we were using movement. I was using yoga, you were using fitness as a way to have bigger conversations with teenagers around everything, like you said, consent and relationship and using your voice in the world and who you want to be. And I know you were doing a lot of anti racism work, anti bullying work, helping immigrant youth integrate into the community. And so, and like you said, it was sort of this avenue. And then when we opened the studio and we said, okay, maybe it's not just youth, but adults come too, we didn't just say, okay, but to adults, we're only going to teach a yoga class or a fitness class. We were going to talk to the adults and create conversation through movement as well, which I just think still is, after all these years, so
Yeah.
unique and revolutionary. But it opens a door because we have to look at things holistically, right? So when you're getting people to move and be in their bodies and breathe and express themselves, all of a sudden you have these really open spaces to change the world, which is really what we were up to and both still are up to big time.
Yeah, I love that. I love
Yeah.
that.
We used to run a co-ed retreat every summer in Whistler, the varsity retreat, where we'd take teenage boys and teenage girls into a house for a week.
It's like a real world episode, right? 16 people in a house, somewhat
Oh no,
adults.
you froze.
Oh no,
Hello. Oh,
I
there
can
you
hear
are.
you.
You're back. Okay, great.
Yeah,
Yeah, it does sound like a real world episode or a whole season. And sometimes it was, but we were using those same tools. We were working out with kids.
technical difficulties.
Uh,
Technical difficulties. Varsity.
yes.
Yeah, varsity. That was so fun to collide worlds together, and I know like we started to do that with like adults as well. I just think like that was so cool because obviously had experience doing it with young girls, and to me it was just so cool to be able to just take them away from their um usual surroundings and just have the depth that you wouldn't normally have when you move them away from the studio, the day to day, which I mean, essentially that's what I do now with the company, right? Is like making sure, yes, day to day leadership, development, inclusion, but when you take them away and retreats and make them feel like seen and included, it's a totally different space that you're opening when you remove them from their day to day.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think youth has always been my why, and I think for you too. And when we work with adults, I think that's what makes our work with adults so much more profound is if you can connect with a teenager, I think you can connect with anyone. and
Yeah.
so you learn how to distill a lot of this development work and a lot of this, the messaging. If a teenager can get it, I think that's really how you refine as a leader, as a teacher, is like work with teenagers. That's what's made us exceptional teachers. I think exceptional
Totally.
leaders is because of the work we do with
And I think I
teens.
haven't like given that much credit to it. I think I will now more than ever. Is like I do get an opportunity and support other people and being in front of people, right? Like sometimes 200, 400 people, SLTs, corporates, and all great people, all who were once teenagers as well. But some of the scariest or hardest workshops that I've done, actually, even this week, was like to work with 17, 16-year-old girls who were just like talking the whole time. I'm like, oh yeah, like I forgot. Like they are nice, but like they really don't care. They're in their own world. And I'm not saying that they don't care. It's just I don't have the relationship built to just dive deep within this hour, and I need to like recalibrate. Because with adults, they can sit there for 2 hours, and they kind of have to. They're getting paid to sometimes, and
Yeah.
but to be able to engage teenagers for an hour, 30 minutes, that's a skill set to me that's important, that has got me where I am.
Totally. Yeah, I obviously work a lot and a lot more again with teenagers. I did a Girl Vana retreat this summer again, and I was like, "Oh shit, this is so
Yeah.
intense." I forgot.
Yeah.
And everyone Gen Z is such a hot topic, and we live in a different world than you and I grew up in as teenagers. And I kind of know and understand what's going on the teen girl side. But what are you sort of seeing in boys or even men? Like I know you still work with a lot of men. What's sort of changed maybe in the landscape from your work 10 years ago with teen boys and men to now?
What I'm seeing now, it's probably the similar in terms of like younger men, but right now, because I'm in this stage, it's for men, it's loneliness is huge, and it's sometimes not on purpose, but as your friends move away, they have their families, you get to, you work at different places, the people that perhaps you grew up with are just a different part of their life. Even it's harder to just like meet a guy and be like, yo, you want to hang out. You often have and hang out and find out values and all that stuff, but like, how do you even get there, right? It's so awkward to even talk about like, I'm gonna go meet a guy. Like, it has to often be in the settings of like a bar or sport, when in actuality, like, I just want to be able to talk to somebody about, a dream or a purpose or my
Mm.
family or my relationship. What I am finding is that, yeah, a lot of guys that I've met, especially when they're not close to me and we're not close to each other, we find that brotherhood or whatever you want to call it, mentorship. But I don't know how you would do it if, you move to a new city, or you are, people are, yeah, you just don't have that many people around you. So I think that's really hard, and I don't know yet the answer to that. I
Yeah.
could perhaps talk about it in the context of youth, but like older men,
Mm.
middle-aged men, like, how do you do that? Like, how have you seen your friends navigate that?
I mean, what I witnessed this last month in Panama, I led two separate kind of containers. One was a yoga teacher training, one was a women's retreat. So 50 women total. And I think like in a post-pandemic world, I
Yeah.
just feel like people's social batteries are so different. Like every night at teacher training, we sit together and have dinner. And that used to be like, that's the jam. Like, can we for dinner where we
Yeah.
all get to be together? And I just watched people being like, I need to take dinner in my room. I need to be alone. It's too loud in here. I'm like, what happened? What
Yeah.
happened to everyone? Like, it's
Yeah.
dinner time. But I just sort of experiencing that where, yeah, this kind of dichotomy of people feeling more alone, like more lonely than ever, but wanting to be alone.
Yeah.
And so I think that these spaces, retreats, workshops, bringing people together are, is more important than ever, but especially for men, because we know sort of historically it's more women that are drawn to these groups, and it's maybe a little bit easier for us to open up. And so I just think that when it comes to work with boys and men, it's so important. And I'm seeing it, maybe it's just an LA thing, but the rise of men's groups. My husband's in a men's group. I have a friend
Yeah.
that leaves a men's group. Like all the men I know are really conscious men, are coming together to sit on Zoom on a Wednesday and talk about their stretches, which is like, I don't know if that's like common men's group terminology, but essentially stretches are just like activities to stretch your mind.
Hmm.
And you journal about it and you talk about it, and I'm like, oh, this is cute, this is what I was doing in high school. But I love it.
Yeah, and that's cool. That's what I get curious about, right? And I do think that's, well, with me, of course, I have my friends, and I travel quite a bit in my work, so I get to feel that, that need of friendship like through that way, which is lucky.
Yeah.
um but often, even in when I used to do events for men specifically, and you would take them away in this like retreat, like what often happens is like, such deep bonding, and I'm still friends with a lot of the people that were at that event. But a lot of the times, the common theme was like a lot of guys would come up to me and say, like, man, like I really, really needed that. But like every person really needed that. And then you start to clue in like, oh, they don't have this, right? You need it. It came at the right time because there's never a time in their day where they are get asked a checking question of like, anything, right? So that's interesting because it's definitely you're in a world not on your own, but just like you're in a community perhaps that's unique and awesome. And there's a lot of guys who are my neighbors where it's like no offense if anyone's listening, the connection point is kids, but the connection point is sometimes sports or like alcohol, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah, that's the way, and I mean, I see it with I see it with my husband and his father. It's like, the text is going to be about sports first. And then there's maybe like an opening to like talk about something else. And I'm curious, you're a father, you have a son. What does that look like for you? I mean, I know you're raising a daughter and a son, but specifically with Carter, in terms of the emotional literacy for you as a father? Like, how do you teach that? How do you share that with him?
I mean, it's a day-to-day process, I would say. Even if I could say that I work a lot with young boys, like I would be it would be fake to say that it's like it's natural or it's easy, because I think the more that I know, the more I realize, of course, like how much I don't know, or I'm like
Yeah.
conscious of my own upbringing and trauma, and like how I speak to him. But to me, it is trying to do things with ease is the hardest part, and like regulating my own self and like how I approach him, which I think the more that I can be conscious of me, whatever it is happening, what's happening with her or him, I'm learning at the same time. I mean, it's very vague to say it, but like the thing that I often use, that like Carrie gave me, that was for him but then became for me, was like halt, right? Which
Mm,
is when something's happening, I think like, okay, is he hungry? H, is he angry? A, is he lonely? Is he tired? Most of
hmm.
the time he's so hungry, he doesn't have the words to just like say it. Like, I'm hungry, I need to make something. Can you make me something? So then he's just annoying and is a
Yeah.
pest sister. And then actually, when I think about it for myself, maybe I'm not hungry because I can feed myself, but like perhaps in the day I was like tired, right? I
Yeah.
didn't get much sleep, and I've been alone the whole time. So then
Yeah.
how I approach him is without saying these things, it affects my relationship with him. So I think the answer is just like this hyper awareness of my own emotion before I
Totally.
even meet what's happening there. Um, gets it to a better place, and then getting him to practice that himself,
Yeah.
right? How to
Yeah.
regulate his own emotions as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the self regulation, I'm sure I can't imagine. I'm not a parent. I know what it means to regulate myself before I teach, to regulate myself in situations on a retreat and with my students. Can you hear my dog? He's just crying. Hold on. Regulating myself with my dog. um, but I can imagine you have these two little mini me's walking around, and then you have to really be on your game in order to support, the myriad of emotions and that they go through as young people. I
Yeah,
would think that would be your greatest work.
yeah.
And I'm curious, what your children like. What are they teaching you right now?
Teaching me. I mean, my daughter Everett, she teaches me to like really slow down because she's so playful and just in her own world. So, once I do take the time to like live in her world, time stops and it's so fun. And then she, without saying it, is like instantly connected to me for more than the usual for like 3 days afterwards, right? So it's just a constant reminder to like really let go of everything that's happening, and like if you're with somebody, like be in their world and
Yeah.
just get lost in their world. And then my son, I think my son is teaching me more about myself, to be honest, because he's older, but he's like in sports. So, he loves basketball, he loves training. And then I'm trying to teach him things to get better at certain things, but then I have to really be conscious of like, well, is this like how much of this is me trying to revert what I didn't have,
Right.
right? And and it only comes afterwards, right? Like even I think even realizing like my kids are at a good place. We live in a really great community, and I worked hard to be here. but like he's not going to experience the same struggle that I would have, that would become this chip on your shoulder to work harder.
Right.
And so in my mind, I'm like, well, how do I get him to do that without getting him to like not have a dad that's not there and didn't care about him? You know what I mean? I don't want that, but I still want him to be resilient and strong.
Right.
So like, how do I duplicate or replicate that? Or do I even want to? Does he even need that?
Well, it's so interesting because your frame of reference for your success
Yeah.
was my dad wasn't around. Mr. So and so had to let me in to play basketball in the morning, whatever that story is,
You
the
make it so chill.
yeah, the janitor came and
Yeah.
let you in so you could play
Yeah.
basketball. But that like that was your origin story. Like that's your hero story. That's like who you are. And I can let you tell that story. I obviously like bastardized it. It's your story to tell. But
No.
it created like that hunger in you, and the drive and the way that you want to change the world. And so you were able to then give your children, your family something different, which is
Yeah.
remarkable. That's the whole point. But then you're like, oh, is Carter going to have enough of that edge, or where does that drive or hunger come from? It's such an interesting thing, and sort of the evolution,
Yeah.
the generational evolution, because you want your son to have the things that you didn't have.
Yeah.
But I just think that's such an interesting reflection.
Yeah. And it's interesting what I see as like a level up, right? And maybe the level up is not anything that I could see, but it is like, it's so random. Like, um, I'm like playing around with this idea, and perhaps it's like somewhere that people have already kind of talked about. Is the idea is like when I was younger, people used to say like, "Oh, you're such an old soul," right? Which is like cool in the moment, of course. But now as a dad, I'm like, oh yeah, I was an old soul because I like lived on my own since I was like
I do.
14 and I had to fend for myself. So it felt good in the moment to have wisdom and to be wise and be looked at, I could, provide for myself. But I'm like, do I want my kids to have that same thing? Do I just want them to be 12 because they're 12 years old
Yeah.
and not have the trauma and experience that I had?
Yeah.
Like, and let's call that a win, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, the innocence is the win, right? Like the fact that they get to be 12 and
Yeah.
not have to think about the things that you had to think about at
Yeah.
12. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
you know, just a daily thing.
Yeah. I it's amazing to see them so
Yeah.
grown. I was present at your daughter's birth, and
Yeah.
I can't how old is she now?
She's 8. Yeah.
8.
She's loving
Yeah.
it. She's dancing everywhere. She's competing in dance, winning. I'm like,
Wow.
I mean, it's so cool to see.
Yeah.
And also, I think that's a commitment to what I'm learning from her, right? Is like, how do I dive into, something that I'm not as familiar as, like a dance world, because it's important to her. And then, have it be just as important in my life as I do with something that I also, love, like basketball,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're getting closer and closer to making the decision to have a kid, and I just have so much respect for parents and especially conscious parents who are not raising their children kind of the sort of you just have kids and you put them into things like you and Carrie are so thoughtful, and always have been as parents, and the way you speak to your children, the way you speak about yourselves around your children, and it's just really inspiring to see such a level of conscious
Yeah.
parenting happening. Um,
Yes. Sometimes it's by accident. When I read those parent books, I'm like, oh,
yeah.
that's to act as a human being.
What do you feel like right now you're learning just personally, like in terms of your own personal growth? Like, what's a lesson you're kind of chewing on?
The lesson I'm chewing on. Um, well, I mentioned a little bit about that idea of like old soul, like what that means. Um, I don't think I've learned yet, but I've really thought about my dad lately and just not. I think I'm in a place now where I can like let go of what happened, because I'm also probably the first 37 years of my life, I use that as like a inspiration and do the opposite, which got me here, which is awesome. But then now, as you kind of, as I pass through this 40 threshold, I'm like, man, you're just a human being, just like doing it,
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to put myself in his shoes and,
Mm.
really see the good more than like what happened, and not forgetting, but like really seeing. And it's hard because it's good, but I don't want to give him that, um, the credit, but I'm like, I'm funny because he was funny. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like that
Yeah.
that stuff. So to me, that's what I'm learning, that you know, adults, parents, it was hard for my parents. And so um, they were playing with the tools that they had in that moment. And, as I said before, that was better than what he got from his parents. And so it's a hard realization, because you have to look, and now I have to look back at everything and try to remember all the good things while
Yeah.
the bad things was happening as well.
Yeah, and I think to some degree that's true growth. It's like when you recognize my former one of my teachers, Georgina, used to say this, like the second birth is when you realize your parents are human beings. It's like a second birth where you go like, damn, I'm
Yeah,
I'm born again watching,
I'm
my
so
parents.
now.
Yeah.
Shit.
Where you witness that and you kind of go, okay, yeah, my parents were human, and they did the best they could with what they had. And yeah, some of that's the story, I think, in our early kind of adulthood. It propels us, right? It creates that drive. But then at some point, I think we have to let the story go and just say, like, thank you for getting me up into this point, because your success is a part of is a part of them.
Yeah.
And you are that revolution for your parents, and being able to alchemize, I think, is really what it is alchemizing the pain of the experience, and go like, look at the family I'm raising now, and um instead of holding on. And you see it in your work too. I certainly see it in my work, is where people will like carry the story like a ball and chain and be like, this is my pain, and because of this, and because of this. And at some point you kind of have to go, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
and because of this also, life is the way you were able to alchemize the pain is what makes life so beautiful.
Yeah. No, it's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, you said it, because it was like, I think the first few years or first 30 years is like, look at my family now. And now I'm like, look at my family now.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
kinder to
Yeah.
that person
Yeah.
to say like and proud instead of like spiteful, which
Yeah.
both the crush hush can exist, but
Yeah.
it's just interesting, like where what I'm learning in that space.
Yeah, and I think this idea of like proving, I certainly have that in me too. Where I'm going to prove to people, this look how
Yeah.
successful I can be, or look how this I can be. And I don't know, maybe it is just getting older. I don't really feel the same desire to prove anymore. Like I don't really have anything to prove.
Yeah.
I just want to like love myself at the end of the day and love the work I'm doing, and it just gets a lot simpler, doesn't it?
Yes. Still doing that love work. Allie
Mhm.
Mac.
Still
I
trying to love myself at the end of the day.
in the quiet moments when there's no one at the studio, all I hear when I like when I go in to actually start my shift is Ali Maz bumping music, just doing yoga, and it's like the loudest music. I'm like, oh, she's putting some love work down. I don't. Let's close the studio for now. It's busy, y'all. Something's happening.
Yeah. I'm
I can,
always I'm always in a my husband would say I'm always in a process. And another one of his favorites is not everything is a workshop.
yeah,
But to
yeah,
me to me it is. I mean, the district for I mean, you're older than me, but not by much. But for me, like that was my late, like kind of mid late 20s. Like I was
wow.
talking to Ashley, who is a teacher for us and still a dear friend, and I lead yoga teacher training with, and we were talking about like how wild we were. Like that
Hmm.
was a wild time. Like we were throwing parties, we were like had all these different boyfriends. Like we were just like in such a interesting point of our lives, like growing up together,
Yeah,
really is what we were doing.
yeah. I mean, I look back and like, because there's lots of studios in Vancouver here, and I'm in part of their events. I'm like, oh, you got like a license for that, like a liquor license. I'm like reliving all these things that we didn't do, but obviously it's things that made us like great. But it's been cool to see, even for those that were part of the district, to continue to see like someone like a young person like Ken, who's now like a huge dance teacher in the studio, right? Or sorry, in Vancouver, teaching, traveling all over the world. And he was someone that not only danced at our parties, but used the space to teach and start his own thing. And now it's like there's some full circle moments where he definitely still tags me in certain things, and he hangs out with people outside of the district. But my Carrie's starting to dance more, and she's like a part of like dance crews that performs, and like her teacher that teaches her is also now in Ken's dance crew, and they're the same age. I'm like, what? is happening? How old am I?
I
And like so
know.
cool at the same time that, one of my wife's teacher is learning from one's kid, who I always see as a kid, but obviously a grown human being, is teaching teachers.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we've come up of enough time to actually see our teens become adults and see what they do in the world. And it's, that was just you saying, hey, you guys need, they were like using a window, a reflection somewhere at a high school, using it as a mirror to learn how to their dance routines, and you said come to our studio, and the ripple effect of the district. And I don't know, every time I sit in circle with people, I felt it a lot this last time when I was in Panama, you know, where I like do an opening circle and I'm just like, I can feel almost the walls of the district kind of like showing
Yeah,
up around me. Like it's an energetic space. It's not a physical space anymore. But we always knew when we closed that the energy of the studio, like it's like in your heart, and I think about that every time I do a speaking engagement or, I'm going to a high school on Monday deep in the valley of Los Angeles, 100 kids. Like to me, it's like, that's where the district in me shows up. And
yeah,
in a big way, and that's the ripple effect. We knew when we closed the doors, it was never closed.
yeah, totally. And I just get to see. I mean, even in traveling in LA and other places, like there's studios that you go to, there's coffee shops that you go to that I felt like, to me, what this district was doing, it wasn't for everyone, on
Hmm.
purpose. And that's like, I don't want anyone to take that as like we were exclusionary. I just believe like we were really speaking to, a people that like not got it. That's the wrong word. I don't know what the word is, but like really speaking to something so unique. Whether it was like the font or the music or, the people there, that it is like when I travel everywhere, like there's certain parts of like a restaurant that I'm like, ooh, like that's so me. Like I get it, and like I blink, or I, yeah, I look at the owner, I'm like, oh, I get what you're trying to do here. Like it's so random, and I think that's what, to me, like what district does is I still have that lens, like in people's fashion. I'm like, well, I see you, I see that little flair that you have, or the way that people open up breweries with in a certain like vibe. I'm like, district was a vibe, but it's also, to me, like a philosophy.
Yeah, I thinking about that Bobby Hundreds quote,
Yes.
childlike and wonder, romantic and revolt. I don't know
Oh
how
yeah.
else it goes. I'm curious, like how that shows up. Childlike and wonder to me just feels like that is the Jian slogan.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, that's my jam. I should get that a tattoo somewhere, but maybe that's out of context and looks weird. But yeah, just having the life still, I think both of us, we work with we have like this affinity to work with young people, but perhaps I said it elsewhere. It's like I have this like urge to work with that young person inside of everyone that you only see like past 11 p.m. at night after a few drinks, or you only see at the third day of a retreat, or you only see when their favorite song comes on. It's like, ooh, like that's who you are. And I think, to me, yeah, I think that's how, thank you for bringing that, because that's how I would describe it, is like, it's when you see people's childlike wonder come out in their music and their cafes and how they speak. It's really inspiring, and it's really cool to see.
Yeah, I'm having this memory of you at the immersion, this like Lululemon thing that you were hosting and I was teaching at. This was maybe a few years after we had closed the studio. And, there was like the dinner and then there's a party. And then it's kind of like people are trickling off. And there's Gian like going to his room to get his own speaker to keep the party going and like
Nice.
running through Malibu to like get the speaker because the bar's closing down, but you're just like, no. And
No.
to me, it's like you're being so you, but you're also still facilitating. And I think that's something that people like, they just don't, we've been around, I've been certainly around these people. I know you have too, where, it's like they show up for the certain amount of time, they leave, you can't find them, they're a leader, but they're over here in some fancy room somewhere. And I think that, you're the opposite. You're like, I will close this party
Yeah.
down. I will have every conversation. I will follow up. I will tag you on Instagram. I will keep this conversation going. It makes the early morning yoga class that much more profound. And, that's something I have kept with me too. Like,
Yeah.
this last retreat, like it was day 2, people were dancing on the table, and I was like, I don't know, this just how this happens here.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, that's so funny because that just happened in my last like thing at work, right? Where we had probably 60 people and it was the last night and it closed and I found a speaker and I got the bartender to just like keep it open even if he wasn't there and it was almost like I think you feel it too, like you were DJing the moment,
Yeah,
you know? And whether it was music or a checking question, you were putting something there that something needed or something that something somebody could attach to, because I was
yeah,
playing music that wasn't just for me, but the moment that people heard it, like you can see them across the room and they're like, yo, that's my
yeah,
jam, right?
yeah,
And I think we do that in terms of like, I think you do that in the work that you do. You're always like seeding in what the next record is that is needed to
yeah,
play, and then like deciding like what that playlist is for the night, but then also like continuing it on afterwards. I think that's what makes you and what made the district a success, or how we facilitated success, is like we're with in the depths with people, not only in the moment but like late at night. I know you need your time and sleep as well, which you do, but like you cannot beat like somebody on stage who was with you like till 3 a.m. last night. Like I don't even have to talk. They know we're instantly connected
yeah.
because we sang John Denver, Take Me Home Country Roads, like till 5 a.m.,
Yeah, I just think it's like it's a very unique approach to leadership, and it works, and I've seen it work, like, and it resonates, right? And there's a humanness, and that's always sort of been my definition of leadership, where there's just like this level of humanness and resonance, and you can only take people as deep as you've gone yourself, and it's not just sort of on the serious path, but on the playful path too. And I think it's your ability to really know joy that allows people to feel so connected, and then the joy then builds the trust, and the trust is really where you can take
Yeah.
people. And it's so cool to see you doing that on the world stage now, from the 900 square foot studio to the world stage. It's just so cool, and I'm so proud
Yeah.
of you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, this is not a flex, but it kind of is a flex to say world stage. Like I remember I can find moments where I did this at the district, where now 3 months ago I did it in Bangkok, like with like 400 people. I definitely led people on stage and it was funny and it was great and it was deep. But then, it was the last night in Bangkok. So we had to find like the club to, take the motorcycle, things to get to. And that was so district. You know what I mean? If people don't understand, but like that's so me, that's so you, but that's so district to do that. And then the next day, still got up and looked at people and said, where we were last night. And not in like a bad way. It's just like we lived last night.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
had a collective triumph and struggle, um and then we're just closer as human beings.
yeah.
And then we go to work and log on Zoom.
Yeah, I love that. The last night of yoga teacher training was Halloween, and Ashley and I dressed up as Justin Bieber and Haley Bieber, and like did a full skit, like performance. Like we went, like made everyone jump in the pool with their clothes on, like ran everyone into the ocean, and everyone was like, you guys are like really, we've never seen yoga teachers act like this before. And we're like, this is district, like it's the last night, what do you think we're gonna do? And then
Oh,
show up the next morning and teach the hell out of that class. And you just give your whole self to the moment, and I think that's what it really speaks to. It's like the
yeah.
moment requires your whole energy, your whole joy. And I don't know, I've just never seen anyone do it better than you.
I have learned to, as a growing human being, have learned to really not like calm it down in a way, because obviously I get my rest, I disappear, and I'm like, I just need to go for a walk or punch something, box, not actual things. But I've learned to be in moments like that, and then when I do meet, like when I go home, like let it be. Like I almost like do my check-in to myself, like at the airplane or like on the ride home, to be like reminisce, nostalgia. But then when I see my kids, when I see my partner, like I'm in a new event, right?
Yeah.
I'm in a new space and I can give the same energy, because to be honest, it was hard back in the day, right? To be able to not just like get home and just like die on the couch.
Totally. I'm still learning that.
People wait for who are waiting for their moments, waiting for their event, waiting for their late
Yeah.
nights. That
Yeah.
I knew, but like now that I'm spending more time and kids are getting older, like yeah, their moment, their district is happening
Yeah.
at the same time.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, and your ability to kind of close that one chapter, come in, step into the new moment and be with what the moment requires and how to, maintain or sustain your energy and your well-being because those moments ask a lot of you. And I'm kind of curious, like, what are you doing? I know you've always been so devoted to your movement. Like, what are you doing to keep yourself kind of mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually together?
uh yeah, okay, this like the I mean, yeah, still working out and doing a lot of boxing, but definitely devouring a lot of like audiobooks while I'm walking. So, because walking is so accessible, and I live in the forest. I have a dog that just like loves to walk. So yeah, that's essentially what I do. It's like a creative process. Often I do challenge myself not to listen to anything. So even that itself, like a walk isn't just a walk. There's sometimes is a walk is to get steps, a walk is to be in nature, a walk is to challenge myself. It's raining, like who cares? But then when I'm like I need a creative outlet, I do go for a walk without music, and things usually, you know, happen
Yeah.
while in that walk. So short and probably the oldest adult answer ever is like a walk.
I know. I don't know. I'm surprised by that. I remember one time at the district, you have to fill out a waiver, and one of the questions in the waiver is like, "How physically active are you?" And someone put walking, and you're like, "Walking? That's not an activity."
We have grown 10 years
Wow.
ago. I'm like, so you walked on your way here? So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Walking. You heard it here first. What is one song that encapsulates the district for you?
Ooh, so many songs, so many songs. I mean, I would say people know it's Mario, Let Me Love You. Every time I still hear that, it's like that high school love that then turned into the high school love of the moment,
Yeah. Yeah.
and when I hear that still, even if people don't know, um never been to the district, they have this love for that song, which is like how I feel about the district in that moment. It's like so good, so nostalgic, and it's yeah, I would say that's one of the answers is like always and continues to be Let Me Love You, District, also
Mm.
by Mario.
Yeah, that is my answer too.
Yeah.
Um, I I've never told you this. I haven't really told many people this, but last year I did a couple
You've been with
ayahuasca.
Mario.
What's
That's
that?
you've been with Mario.
Yeah, and no.
That song with
Um
you.
I did a couple ayahuasca ceremonies last year, and one of the nights that I was sitting with the medicine, um, if anyone's ever done ayahuasca, it's really gnarly, and I'm not recommending it unless you feel really called to it. But a lot of my sort of questionings in going into the ceremony was kind of like, what are my next steps? And there was this one point in the ceremony where I was being shown to build the floor of the district.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, like, what do you mean? Like, the district's done. Like, I was like, that's a other part of my life. And, grandmother ayahuasca is like, no, build the floor. Like, get on your hands and knees and like put the floor together. We had this like wood floor. And so I was like on my hands and knees and building the floor of the district. And it was just this really symbolic moment of what the district meant to me to build something from the ground up. It was sort of like her urging me, sort of showing me like, you just start at step one again, just like you did. And the district really taught me like that dreams are real. Like we had a vision. We sat and had a coffee. We said, wouldn't it be cool if? And then we
Yeah.
just executed. And so for me, the district, like the kind of proverbial building of the floor of the district is something that we did.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There's so much symbolism in the district for me as like as a concept, as an idea, like
Mhm.
almost an incubator that all dreams are real. If you were able to do that thing, you're able to do anything.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah,
And adding the floor was made the studio real, right? Made it
yeah,
different from all the other ones, and it was the
yeah,
last thing that was taken away. Also, when they closed the studio, and then secretly, it's also the annoying part about the studio that like the floor was like always broken, you know? Maybe it was that, the medicine telling you that, like, fix the floor. But yeah, it is. There's so much like, yeah, connection to that moment, which isn't just a moment anymore, I guess.
No, I mean, yeah, the floor would literally be like people would be with their battle ropes, the floor be coming up. They're like, "Oh, the floor." We're like, "No, don't worry, just tap it down."
Like that's the interesting part, right? Because I go to so many studios, and studios are amazing now. Like they're so well put together, branded, and like there is community for sure. Like I'm not saying like District was the only one, but um, there's something about like the floor not being perfect and like no one cared. Like people would come in early and like fix the floor for us. I'm like, y'all, you don't have to do this, but like, but that could be a Yelp review in 2023 of like that studio was horrible, 3 out of 5. The floor didn't make sense, but back just I think the community that we had were just like people. Not that they didn't care about it being a great looking place. It was just it was a part of them. So fix it with us.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, I've seen many studios, won't mention any names, but
Yeah,
millions behind a studio, and it just can't touch. It
dollars,
can't
right?
touch what that did. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean
Um,
that's yeah.
yeah, my one of my last questions, and I want to sort of ask all guests these questions. They're pretty heavy, but uh, something I've been really chewing on in my own life and the work that I do with women and all people, and kind of looking at the world, and seeing so much, challenge and violence and war. And I also look at what the reflection is within ourselves of our own, the wars that we wage within ourselves. And what does it mean to you to end the war within yourself? Or another way of saying that is like, how are you being kinder to yourself? How are you not causing harm to yourself? Like, what are the ways in which we look out here and go, wow, that's really fucked up, but when we look inside of ourselves, what are you doing to sort of make peace within your own self?
Jeez. Whew. Um, that took a turn, that question. Um, the way that I make peace with myself, like on a daily
Yeah.
or in general.
Yeah.
Um, I spoke about it earlier. I think work in progress, as I always am, and perhaps other people, but definitely not lingering on parents anymore, and just like forgiving and seeing them for who they are, and actually yeah, seeing all the great parts to me is healing. On the day to day, I would say, um, I think now it's connected to walking. Is I still love working out and feeling exhausted, but being more intuitive in like what my body needs for the week. It's not just like I need to feel like I destroyed this workout or I won at that workout, which sometimes that's what the district workouts were. And that's not bad, right? But I think just being more intuitive
Mm.
in what my body needs today.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a walk? Is it boxing? Is it, walking my dog with like a ruck, which is like a weighted backpack, or like sleeping in? I think you'd be proud of me if that I sleep in sometimes past 7:30.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
But it's like, to me, that's like the hardest workout ever, right? And rest, because that's even like when you're in this bubble of like wellness, especially like strength and conditioning and sport and athleticism. Rest is often like the one that's like doesn't get seen as um, sexy, or people do, but like really trying to flip rest as a part of being stronger,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
that's probably, you hearing me say that is like weird and awkward, because I'm like, let's just drink coffee and like go more. But I think that's, to me, what is different is I'm more intuitive in what I do with my energy. And
Yeah.
that specifically for this question, like how I work out, but even just who I see on a day to day. Like this has been so like rewarding, um, and full, like filling, and something that I've missed. Um, but to have this every day, is a lot. You know, not you, but just like have these types of conversations.
I'll see you in 5 years.
Yeah, 5 years is all I can take with these types of questions. All I do is ask questions. I do not answer them, which probably you'll know if I was in my session. So don't ask questions. So yeah, that would be my answer. I don't know if that makes sense or if it resonates, but just, you know, being intuitive.
Mm. If we really knew you, we would know.
If you really knew me, you would know that I mean, I've changed so much, but I haven't changed. Um, not only in my looks, but just like the joy that I have
Mm.
in meeting people and having joy in every part of my life. That's me. I've already said it. Also, if you really knew me, like I do listen to a lot of rap music, but there's days probably the not days there's moments in my drive home, which is like 30 minutes 35 minutes, where like country roads does come on. And it's usually the time in my ride where there's like no one around, you know, it's the traffic isn't going to stop. But to me it's just I don't even know what the words mean, because obviously I've never been to like that part of the world, but um it just means so much to me, that song, and I don't know what it is yet, why, but it's the same reason why like Let Me Love You means a lot
Mm.
to us as a district. Country
Mm.
Roads, I think, is probably my dad's favorite song. When I think
Mm.
about it, it's like his karaoke song. He did spend some time in West Virginia. I've never said that out loud, but that he did spend some time in Virginia. So yeah, there's moments, if you knew me, in my 30 minutes ride home when most of it is rap music, but there's 3 minutes of it when there's no one around, it's just trees. When John Denver is the jam, y'all.
My last question is, if you could tell yourself the 10 years ago, who you were 10 years ago and opening the studio, like sitting where you're sitting now, like in this beautiful home, your two beautiful children and the job you have, you know, when we were just starting something and we really didn't know what we were doing, what would you tell 10 years ago, Jian,
Yeah.
about you now?
Ooh, about me now.
Yeah.
I mean, do people ask you this question? What would you say?
This is not my interview. Oh, am I frozen?
Okay. Do
Okay.
people ask you this question? Because what would you say?
No, I said this is not my interview. You are my interviewee.
Okay, I would say, yo, it's gonna be fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Like, it's gonna be painful, and it's gonna be like joyous and confusing, but it's gonna be worth it. And you're gonna learn a lot about yourself. But at the end of the day, like, it's something that you're gonna go through, you know. And I know we're just speaking about the district itself, the timeline, but there's so much happening within that like 5 years of the studio with you, myself, family, life. And I think in all encompassing, you're gonna get through it, and it's gonna be something that you made it through that will help you perhaps support other people, but more importantly, like where I'm going in the next 10 years. So it's gonna be fucking awesome and
Yeah.
painful.
Yeah, I would say something similar. I would also say like, yeah, like you did it. Like all the things you wanted to do, you did it and then some.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then some. Well, thank you, Jian Sebastian Pablico, for your time, your energy, your inspiration. Thank you for the work that you do in the world, because I know that you touch so many lives just by being yourself. And I think that's really the goal in life, is to really figure out your purpose and give it to the world. And you're such a beautiful example of that. And, you know, just love you. And you know.
The worst speech, yeah. Then you know, because every time we have a huge speech at the studio, I make a huge acknowledgement and celebration of everyone that works there, parents and high school teachers from 14 years ago. And then when it came to Alex, I just say, you know, the worst. But she knows.
I do. Do you know that in my acknowledgments in the back of my book, that I
Yes,
just wrote, Jan, you know?
I
Yeah.
did. I read that.
Where can people find you? What's your
Uh,
home address?
don't find me. Where can you find me? I mean, you could probably find me in the usual places. Instagram, it's just my full name, Jian Pablico. I'm also pretending that I'm going to write a poetry book. Someday, perhaps the next activity, the next podcast, I'll talk about it. Such a random idea, but I'm going back to my roots, y'all.
Yeah. Tell everyone your secret poet name.
My secret poet name was Uno. When I first did open mic, the guy couldn't pronounce my name, so I said my name is Jian, sir, and he said I'll just call you Uno because that's too hard. I'm like, thank you, slightly racist, but I'm going to use that as my name now.
Okay, so
Yeah,
Uno is gonna drop a poetry book.
poetry doesn't drop.
Oh,
Poetry
sorry.
arrives. Okay.
Okay, the poetry is arriving 2024.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Jian. It was so wonderful to speak with you, and I'll see you in 5 years.
Yeah. See you in 5 years. Thanks, Ali. Thanks
Thank
for
you. Okay.